I was standing in the grocery store aisle, holding a loaf of bread in my hand, and my phone in the other. Not because I was checking a recipe, not because I was comparing prices. I was waiting for my son to tell me if I was allowed to buy food. That realization didn't hit me like a scream. It landed quietly, like something heavy settling in my chest. My heart was pounding so loudly. I could hear it over the soft music playing above the shelves. My fingers were trembling. The way they do when you feel like you've done something wrong but you don't know why. I stared at that loaf of bread and thought, I am a grown woman. I buried my husband. I raised a family, and now I'm asking permission to eat. That was the moment something inside me snapped. Not loud, not dramatic, just final. I slowly put the bread back on the shelf, like it had burned my palm. I walked out of the store with an empty cart, and a chest so full of shame it felt hard to breathe. And before I tell you how it all happened, I want you to know this. The same son who made me ask permission to buy groceries is the same son who later sat in front of me and begged for my forgiveness. Thank you for staying with me. It truly means more than you know. And before I go on, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I really do read them. My name is Pearl. I live in Maine where winters are sharp, the air cuts deep, and the quiet can feel heavier than the cold when you're grieving. I sat in my car that day, hands resting on the steering wheel, staring straight ahead. People walked past me with full grocery bags, laughing into their phones, calling out to each other. And I remember thinking how normal that should have been for me, too. Buying food should never feel like a test you might fail. Buying bread should never feel like something you need permission for. On the drive home, the radio was playing, but I couldn't tell you a single word they said. My mind kept circling one question. When did my home stop feeling like my home? And when did my son become the gatekeeper of my life? It didn't happen all at once. Control never does. It happens slowly, in small, quiet pieces. Pieces that look harmless, especially when you're grieving. After my husband passed, I wasn't myself. I moved through the days like I was made of glass, trying not to shatter completely. My son was there. He held my arm when my knees felt weak. He spoke for me when I couldn't find my voice. And when the house became too quiet and the nights too long, he said, Mom, come stay with us for a while, just until you feel steady again. You'll be safer. You won't be alone. And it sounded like love, like a hand reaching down into darkness. So I said yes. At first it really did feel like help. My room was warm. The grandkids hugged me in passing. The kitchen was always noisy, the good kind of noise that makes you feel alive again. Then one evening, not long after I moved in, my son sat down with that serious look he gets, the one that makes you think he's about to say something responsible. He said it would be easier if he handled the bills, that he could keep everything organized, that I didn't need the stress, and because I was still deep in grief, because grief makes you tired in places you didn't know could get tired, I handed him my debit card. He said he'd manage my pension, my social security, just to make sure nothing falls behind. And I nodded because I trusted him, because protection sounds comforting when you're broken. But protection doesn't come with fear. I didn't understand that yet. The changes were small at first. What did you spend today? He'd ask casually. I answered because I had nothing to hide. Then it became, let me see the receipt. And every time I handed it over, my stomach tightened, even though I couldn't explain why. If I bought apples because they were on sale, he'd sigh. Mom, you don't need extra things. Extra things, it was food. The day I brought home cookies for the grandkids, he held them up like evidence. We talked about this. You can't spend without asking. He said it in front of them. My face burned with shame. After that it became normal. Text me before you buy anything. We need to watch your spending. And each time he said it, something inside me folded a little smaller. My card wasn't even in my wallet anymore. I stood at counters feeling like a guest in my own life. And the worst part, I started doubting myself. I had run a household for decades. I knew how to stretch a dollar until it screamed. But by the time I stood in that grocery aisle with the bread, I wasn't just asking permission. I was starting to believe I needed it. That fear followed me home. When I walked through the door that day, my son barely looked up. Did you buy anything? When I said no, he nodded like I'd finally learned my lesson. That night, I opened my purse and saw the empty card slots, and the little bit of cash I'd hidden like a secret. And I thought, how did I get here? Hiding grocery money like I'm doing something wrong. That was the night I realized something important. This wasn't care, it was control. The next morning, I waited until he left for work. I didn't want to fight. I wanted answers. I went to the bank, and when the woman pulled up my account, her expression changed just slightly. She leaned in and asked gently, "Mrs. Harris, did you know your son added himself as a joint owner on your account?" My stomach dropped. His name was right there. Neat, official, like I'd invited him in. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I sat up straighter and said, "Not anymore." Because love doesn't sneak its name onto your life. Love asks. We removed him, opened new accounts, changed every password, every PIN. For the first time in months, I was treated like I belonged to myself again. From there, I went straight to legal aid. Because money wasn't the only thing that had been taken. The lawyer listened quietly. Then said, "Pearl, you have rights, and you can change this today." And I did. When I came home, I didn't announce anything. But when my son's card got declined, when he stormed into my room demanding answers, I looked him in the eyes and said, "I am your mother, not a problem to manage, and I will never ask permission to buy bread again." That night, I began planning my exit, quietly, carefully, because freedom doesn't always start with a fight. Sometimes, it starts with a plan. I moved into a small senior apartment nearby. The quiet scared me at first, then it became peace. I cooked when I wanted, I shopped when I needed, and every time I carried my groceries through my own door, I felt my dignity settle back into my bones. Months later, my son came to see me. He looked smaller somehow. He held my hand and said, "Mom, I was wrong. Can you forgive me?" I looked at him and said, "Forgiveness isn't something you demand. It's something you earn with respect." And that's where my story ends. Not with revenge, not with shouting, but with a woman choosing herself. If this story touched you, please like and subscribe. And if you've ever been made to feel small by someone who said they were helping, you're not alone.